meeting has been reconvened as it was adjourned last Monday, the 27th of April, as a result of a nationwide outage of Virgin Media broadband, which has interrupted the live stream coverage of the meeting via Facebook, as well as several councillors and officers who also lost their connection during the meeting. Because of this, it is necessary to confirm the decision taken on the first planning application considered at that meeting, that of the night shelter, which I shall come to shortly. The remaining items not considered last Monday are to be considered tonight. But before we start the meeting, can I remind all members of the following? Please ensure that you mute your mics when not speaking. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed. Please try to avoid repeating points which have already been made. And please avoid interrupting other councillors and respect the position of the chair. At the beginning of each item, I will ask councillors who wish to speak on that item to do so via the chat box on their computers. Councillors who haven't got the chat box, I will ask them individually. And I will take a note of them, as will the Democratic Services team. I will then call the councillors in the order in which I have listed them. The method of voting will follow the precedent we set at our recent full council meeting, and will be different to the normal in that I shall start by asking any councillors who are voting against any matter to say so first, followed by those abstaining. That will give me and the officers the chance to see where there appears to be a majority of those in favour of matter, and should avoid the need to keep reading out the names of all the committee members on a roll call. And I will remind you of this when we get later into the meeting. Please remember that this meeting is still being broadcast in the normal way via Facebook, so members of the public can still hear what is being said and decided upon. With these matters in mind, can I call on Mark Devlin to do a roll call of all the councillors and officers to ascertain who is in attendance? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask all councillors in attendance just to state if you are present when I call your name, please? Councillor Rachel Lyons.
I'm here.
Councillor Ruth Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Bialek.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Branston.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Fole.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Amal Gussain.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Harvey.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Yolanda Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Morse.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Greg Sheldon. Councillor Sheldon.
Present.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Keith Sparks.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Sutton.
Yeah, present. Better late than never. Sorry, guys.
Thank you. We also have Councillors Wood and Councillor Oliver speaking under standing orders in attendance. And now may I ask for officers in attendance to also state, please, if you're present. So, Director Bindu Arjun.
Present.
Thank you. Assistant City Development Manager Roger Clotworthy.
Present.
Thank you. Principal Project Manager Paul Jeffrey.
Present.
Principal Project Manager Matt Diamond.
Present.
Thank you. Project Manager Joran Maglin.
Present.
Thank you. Project Manager Keegan Faraday.
Present.
And we also have Democratic Services Officers Mark Devin and Howard Bassett in attendance. I can confirm that we're fully quorate, Chair, to proceed with the meeting.
Thank you, Mark. And obviously, we have no apologies for this meeting, which is item 1 on the agenda.
That's correct, Chair.
So we'll go on to the next item on the agenda is item 2, declarations of interest. If any members have any disclosed pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda and have not already been included on the register of interest, to declare them before any discussion takes place on this item. The next item of business is the item 3, access to information, Local Government Act of 1985 for the exclusion of press and public. There are no part 2 items on the agenda. This now takes us on to item 4, the night shelter at Maglin Street. We need to seek to reaffirm the vote and decision to approve the planning application for the night shelter, which was made last Monday by this committee, but was not audible to members of the public because of the outage. But before I do this, I understand that Councillor Morse wishes to make a statement on this matter. Councillor Morse.
As I mentioned last week, as the lead portfolio holder for this member, the press and publicity that surrounded this application, I believe could be interpreted that I've predetermined the application, and as such, I've removed myself from voting or speaking on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Can I please remind all members that they should not deviate from the way in which they voted last week? So can I ask a member to move the reaffirmation of the decision by means of a vote?
Councillor Williams, I move.
And the seconder, please.
Seconded, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Councillor Williams and Sutton. As I mentioned before, I will first ask members who wish to vote against the application to say so now. Are there any abstentions? Thank you, members. Those numbers show that there is a clear majority in favour of the recommendation, so I declare that it is carried. So this now takes us on to item 5 on the agenda, the land at Pullin Road, Pinhoe, and Paul Jeffrey will make the presentation. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can see the presentation in front of you. If you just confirm, Chair, that is indeed the case.
I can see it, yes.
Thank you. Okay, members will remember this application, which went to the committee in February of this year. However, just for clarity, I'll just run through the presentation again. It's a location plan with access from Pullin Road. Application site is north of Bourne Rise. A few photographs to show the site. The right-hand garage is to be removed, and that's where the access is proposed to be created in its place. This is looking across the field towards the access road in the bottom corner, left-hand corner. Again, this is looking down towards the access point of Pullin Road. This shows Bourne Rise properties in the distance. The site, as you can see it, existing properties are shown to the north, which are hill cottages, which I'll come back to later on the right-hand side of your screen. Again, Bourne Road properties to the southern end of the site, and again, there's Bourne Road properties. This is a position of an emergency access, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. A layout which members saw hasn't changed largely since the previous application, and some just indications of the design that's being proposed of the house types. This is some computer generated images of the site. See where the garage has been removed and the access created. Again, coming into the site and looking up the site. So just give you an indication of the types of properties that are being proposed. Okay, as the report sets out, there are 3 reasons for the application being deferred, namely insufficient affordable housing being proposed, which at the time was 15% and represented 6 units out of a total of 40. The local plan policy requires 35% affordable housing, which would equate to 14 units. Secondly, the number of car parking spaces provided on the site was considered excessive at 86 for 40 dwellings, and therefore consideration should be given to a car-free development. And thirdly, whether 2 electric charging points rather than 1 could be installed at each dwelling. Members will recall that although the site lies within an area of landscape setting, the recent development of Home Farm and Pinho Quarry means that it would be difficult to justify the area's retention in policy terms. Therefore, residential development of this site is considered acceptable in principle. In addition, whilst many residents have expressed concern about the suitability of the proposed access arrangement, the highway officer, who attended the February committee, raises no objections subject to suitable conditions and a financial contribution of £130,000 towards highway improvements in the Pinho area, in line with Pinho area access strategy. The overall layout remains essentially unchanged from the one members saw in February. However, the affordable housing offer from the applicant has been increased from 15 to 25%, which equates to an increase from 6 to 10 units out of the total of 40 units, and this will include 6 social rented units. Members are reminded that the original scheme was assessed by the council's independent viability consultant, who considered that 15% was justified. It is understood that Virtu Homes are willing to take a reduced profit margin for this development, but the offer of 25% cannot be increased. Officers consider the increase to 25% is significant and therefore recommend approval. In respect to the parking levels, these have been reduced by 4 spaces to 82 spaces in total through the reduction in the number of spaces for 2 of the larger units. Overall, the number of visitor parking spaces has been increased to provide greater flexibility. Virtu Homes did not wish to pursue a car-free development. The applicant has sought advice about the provision of an additional charging point and concluded that it would not be necessary, as a need for 2 cars at a particular property to require full charging at the same time would be highly unlikely. There has been 3 additional letters of objection which have reiterated the previous concerns as summarised in the representation section of the report. In addition, significant concern has been raised about the suitability of the emergency access to the northeast corner of the site. This access is only to be used if the main access is blocked, so its use would be very minimal. It is understood that Virtu Homes, who have right of access, have contacted some of the residents who own the land, although this is disputed by some residents. The highway officers raised no objection to the use of this access if used on a very occasional and hopefully never occasion. A condition is proposed which would limit the access to be used only by ambulance, fire or police services. Members are reminded that the ownership of the land is a civil matter which is beyond the remit of the council. In addition, an amendment has been made to the landscape condition along the southern boundary in response to a neighbour's request for additional planting. In conclusion, it is considered that the increased affordable housing offer from 15 to 25% is significant in this instance, and given the changes to the parking arrangement, this application is acceptable. Overall, the scheme would deliver 40 units towards our identified 5-year housing shortfall, and this would include 10 affordable properties. The application is still liable and subject to the payment of £130,000 towards highway improvements in the Pinho area, an educational contribution of nearly £1,790,000, and a 106 agreement to secure 10 affordable units as part of this development. Your officers recommend approval.
Thank you, Paul. Do any members have any questions of clarification?
I do. Councillor Harvey.
Hello?
Carry on, Councillor Harvey.
Yep. I've got 2 questions of clarification, Paul. One is, do we need an emergency access, or does this site need an emergency access? And if so, why? And secondly, can you tell me what standing the Pinho area access strategy has? Is it a Highways England thing? Is it a county council thing? What's its actual standing, please? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harvey, in answer to your first question, I did check with the highway officer this afternoon about the emergency access because it has been cause of some concern, and he has confirmed that the emergency access isn't actually required. It is allow greater flexibility if there was to be an emergency, but in highway terms there is no requirement for that emergency access, so it could be deleted from the plan if members wished. In answer to your second question, the Pinho access document is from Devon County Council, and I'm not sure whether that is an adopted document, but it's certainly from Devon County Council.
Thank you, Paul.
Are there any other points of clarification?
Yes, Councillor Henson, please, Chair. Hello? Hello?
Carry on, Councillor Henson.
I would like to ask, was there, I presume that the emergency entrance is the top right. Could you verify that? Was there, is there, is there in the future, if this continues to be built around there, any other entrance of traffic, even thought of or will be looked at in the future on this site at all? Because it seems to be an awful lot of traffic coming down into one area.
Councillor Henson, hopefully you can see the screen in front of you, and it has, and I think hopefully if this works, there is the access road. It is to the northeast corner, so that's where it's proposed to be. And as I said in answer to Councillor Harvey's question, it can be removed if because it isn't essential for this development. The application can be suitably accessed through the access to the southwest corner, and that is perfectly acceptable in highway terms. As I say, the emergency access is there just for greater flexibility.
No, you haven't answered the question, Paul. The fact remains is, if development continues around that area, have you envisaged locking into the new development to get access, further access to relieve the pressure on this site?
Councillor Henson, in terms of the access is the one shown to the southwest corner of the site, and that's the sole access to serve this development. If any application came in, which I'm not aware of in terms of development in the area, obviously they would have to show their own access. I think it's unlikely that it would come through this particular point, but that's not in front of us today, and clearly would have to take that application on its merits when it was submitted.
Thanks, Paul.
Are there any other questions? Right, thank you. Now we have Councillors Trish Oliver and Duncan Wood wishing to speak under standing order. Councillor Oliver, I believe you're going to speak first. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Right, okay. Right, good evening everybody. I would welcome a zero carbon development if it wasn't in Pinho. Pinho suffers from increasing traffic congestion and decreasing air quality. Both will be exacerbated by developments currently being built and the quarry, which is planning permission for 340 houses. Vehicle access for the quarry is off Harrington Lane. All traffic for this Verto home site will also need to go along Harrington Lane to reach the vehicle access off Pulling Road. The need to encourage sustainable travel options is therefore vital in this location. The resubmitted plans have reduced the overall number of parking spaces by 4, which still leaves 29 of the 40 houses with 2 parking spaces. Pinho has co-cars available, which reduces the need for households to own a second car. I suggest 20 of the 40 houses need to be limited to 1 parking space to reduce the negative impact of the development on Pinho's environment. Secondly, we are currently living in coronavirus lockdown. For too many Exeter people, this means being locked down in squalid or cramped accommodation with no garden. We have a housing crisis in this country, So there is an ethical imperative to provide as much affordable housing as possible. I applaud the increase from 15% to 25% in this resubmission. I would ask that it is increased further to 30% before planning permission is granted. Thank you. That's my lot.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Has any member got any points of clarification they wish to ask, Councillor Oliver? If there are no questions to Councillor Oliver, can I ask Councillor Duncan Wood if he would like to speak, please, also under Standing Order 44?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. This is a very interesting development, and in an appropriate location, I would probably have been supportive of it. However, this development is not in isolation, and it is indeed in the wrong location. This edge of Pinhoe has a limited road infrastructure, suffering from a high density of traffic with a severe bottleneck at one end and a new development on Church Hill, which will increase the traffic flow, which is already at capacity, and will exit onto the same road in the other direction. Another development a few hundred yards away from this is the quarry development, which my colleague has spoken about earlier. When this was first given planning permission, part of the conditions involved contributing a significant amount of money to building a north to south link road across eastern fields to alleviate some of the traffic that would result from it. This can now no longer go ahead, so the traffic from the 340 houses in the quarry development will have to be absorbed by the existing overloaded traffic network. This adds to a large succession of developments across Pinhoe. Individually, each has been assessed as not having significant impact on traffic. But anyone who knows Pinhoe roads will know that this has aggregated to the point where the traffic has been impacted significantly. Each individual application has been assessed and the impact has been accepted. But together it is too much, and anyone that actually drives the roads, the real living experience of driving in Pinhoe, will know it's beyond capacity. This application is on the same side of Harrington Road as the Churchill development and the quarry development, and that particular road layout has not improved or changed for centuries. And there is a large or an extreme bottleneck at Cheney Gate, which is the only main route into the city centre unless the drivers traverse the whole of Pinhoe onto double roundabouts and down through the main road. There is no easy way out of this location. Apart from the actual location and design itself, which is very poor, actually when cars reach the main highways, it's extremely difficult to reach a town centre. I've been told that the highway authorities are aware of this, and I'm left wondering at what point applications will be challenged on the basis of traffic flow. As I say, each one is allowed to pass, but they aggregate the impact and masses to the point where there is an impact. In this particular case, the report mentions impact will be mitigated by a contribution to a Pinhoe area access strategy. This strategy is something I am unaware of the status of it. As a Pinhoe councillor, I have never formally seen it or been consulted on it. I cannot comment on whether or not it meets the needs of the community I represent. As with most areas of Pinhoe, Harrington Road is at or beyond its capacity. I would need to see how this additional traffic will be mitigated by this strategy. Beyond this, the access to this site specifically is extremely poor. The road that it goes down is clearly not designed to be the entrance to an estate. and I find it difficult to believe that this is acceptable in any way. How can access to a site be put aside as a civil matter, as it says in the papers, therefore not relevant? Access is pretty crucial, isn't it? And for an emergency access to have been included, it must have been deemed necessary at some point, but now it's not. Again, this seems to be discarded as not relevant. This seems to be a development to be achieved at any cost, irrespective of whether or not it can actually be safely accessed and whether or not the traffic itself can be absorbed by the networks, which as a local, I know is already beyond its capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Has anybody got any points of clarification to Councillor Wood? If there are no questions to Councillor Wood, we have members of the public speaking on this application. So can I ask Mrs Radford, who is speaking against the application, to speak, please? You will have 3 minutes to speak on the item, and you will be advised when the 3 minutes are up. You may hear a little alarm, but if not, one of us will tell you when the 3 minutes is up. So when you're comfortable, Mrs Radford, if you would like to give your submission. Thank you.
Further information and objections have come to light since the last planning meeting on the 10th of February 2020. The loss of Exhibition Way Link Road has put huge pressure on traffic from the east of Exeter heading towards the city centre using Harrington Lane. It also means that all traffic from the approved quarry development of some 380 homes will also be using Harrington Lane, which at one crucial point narrows down into a contested one-way system. The primary school already has traffic and parking issues, therefore there are serious and unresolved safety concerns. The new development will compound these issues. Whilst these proposals demonstrate acceptable access in theory, it is convoluted and in practice will prove difficult with the one-way passing point. This is the reason... Hello? This is the reason why emergency access is needed to the northeast along a third-party owned private driveway to Church Hill. There is no guarantee that this access will be maintained, as this is beyond the control of the developer. The future of the emergency access is therefore uncertain but remains critical to this proposal in terms of highway acceptability. The volume of traffic on Harrington Lane and the compounding impact of both the Pulling Road and quarry site traffic remains an outstanding problem which is neither ameliorated nor addressed by Devon County Council's proposed Pinhole Area Access Strategy addendum. More houses are likely to lead to more traffic and more congestion in Pinhole and reduced air quality, even when people are encouraged to use sustainable forms of transport. The most important issue is that the developer has still not met the legal requirements of providing the correct number of affordable houses. I feel strongly that this must be adhered to, as it will set a precedent for other developers to follow when there is such a great need for social and affordable housing in Exeter. For a Labour council to pass this development when the criteria is not being met would go against the ethos of what they are supposed to stand for. The drainage situation is very concerning as it is restricted on this development. I understand water from the quarry site is being diverted and further investigation is needed into the actual water course. The Pulling Road development will have a major effect on the existing habitat and wildlife, together with the cosmopolitan design of the houses, which are not in keeping with the surrounding landscape. Once again, no account has been taken to protect our countryside and the ever-decreasing green belt in and around Pinhole. It seems a contradiction in terms to build low-carbon houses and destroying the ecosystem in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Radford. You were just on your 3 minutes, which was good. Are you happy to take any questions?
Yes.
So, members, have any of you got any points of clarification that you would like to ask Mrs Radford? Thank you, Mrs. Radford. Can I ask Mr. Darren Summerfield, who is speaking in support of the application, to speak, please? You also have 3 minutes to speak on this item, and you too will be advised when the 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. My name is Darren Summerfield, and I'm a consultant with Exeter-based LRM Planning. As you know, you first considered this scheme back in February. Following your feedback, we've been working to revise the proposal. The committee report provides an update, but I would also like to add some further detail. Like others, Verto homes are now adapting to a very different set of circumstances. The development industry makes a significant contribution to the economy, both in terms of GDP and jobs, and will of course have an important part to play in the period following the current restrictions. To assist, all parties need to work together to ensure the permissions are in place and then circumstances improve. Not all councils are working as proactively as Exeter to keep this process moving, and we wanted to go on record to say that you should be commended for your efforts. We've taken on board your concerns about affordable housing, and this has been increased to 25%. As you will be aware, local and national policy make very clear provision for reduced levels of affordable housing where there are evident viability issues. We have been through an assessment, and the council's own consultant agrees that there is a very clear case for reduced provision. In light of this technical evidence, the proposal must therefore be considered to be in accordance with the relevant policy. I would like to make some further points on this issue. The increased level of affordable housing has been possible because the applicant has effectively decided to accept a reduced margin. This was, of course, a business decision on their part, but it reflects Verto's desire to deliver zero-carbon homes in Exeter. It is also important to note that the council's own viability consultant has confirmed that the premium achieved for these homes will effectively be eroded by the significant additional build costs. The applicant is not asking the council to reduce its requirements to subsidise their business. Additionally, the council's viability consultant has confirmed that there are significant abnormal costs associated with this site. Crucially, it is common ground that if the site were to be developed by a traditional builder, these abnormal costs would still apply, and it's therefore likely the same level of provision would be achieved. We've explored the inclusion of additional EV charging points and reduced the number of parking spaces. These matters are covered in the auditor's report. If you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We note some additional representations, and we've been in contact with the officer about these. We can confirm that the rights of access for adjoining landowners will not be impeded. I can also confirm again the applicant was not able to reach an agreement with the landowner for the Bourne Rise access, which is therefore undeliverable. As I hope you will agree, the applicant has been incredibly fair in their working with officers and has made a significant number of concessions following your input. We hope that you will agree that this proposal now strikes a much better balance. The scheme will provide much needed market and affordable homes and also support the council's commitment to be a carbon neutral city by 2030. We've appreciated a second opportunity to bring the application before you and respectfully request that you grant approval this evening. Thank you.
I'm sorry your 3 minutes are just up. Before we go any further, can I ask Councillors Harvey and Sutton to mute their mics, please, because we're getting feedback. Right, do any members have any questions to Mr. Summerfield? Can you please indicate now?
I would, Chair. Councillor Branston.
Carry on, Councillor Branston.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Summerland, in Richard Pearce's letter of the 24th of April, he raised the issue that there were significant abnormal costs associated with this site, and you also mentioned that issue as well. Clearly, there is a concern and conflict between reduced profit margins and the council's objective to provide 35% affordable homes. So it would be therefore helpful if you could clarify clearly and in detail what all these abnormal costs are. Thank you, Mr. Summerland.
Could you answer that, Mr. Summerfield, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. It's important to acknowledge at the outset that these costs have been agreed by your own consultant. So these aren't a point of conflict. But in general terms, we've got £700,000 for abnormal groundworks, £215,000 for infrastructure and access, and there's £408,000 for cut and fill. £158,000 are set out for other abnormal costs. There's also additional costs associated with split level housing, engineering, provision of retaining walls, etc. It's of note that the local education authority have asked for a contribution of £208,000. That is over and above the SIL requirement that the developer will already pay. So they're considered to be an unexpected and abnormal cost. And then the transport contribution has also been covered earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland.
Have you got another question, Councillor Branston?
No, I just wanted to thank Mr. Sutherland for that concise response.
Well, we have a question from Councillor Sheldon.
Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you. My question relates to the affordable housing. Obviously, we have the proposals for 6 social rented units, which is fine, and 4 units that are described as, hang on, trying to find 9 notes, discount market sale. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that 20 people buy the house at a 20% discount, and when it's sold on, they have the discounts passed on to subsequent owners, which is good. But reading some of the data I found on it, as long as their household income doesn't exceed 45% of the reduced purchase price, which strikes me that a lot of people, if it's a £250,000 house reduced by 20% to 200,000, people with a household income of up to £90,000 would be able to buy it. Now, bluntly, they'd be able to afford to pay for it at 250,000. And my question is really, why are you going for market housing rather than just all affordable rent?
Could you answer that, Mr. Summerfield, please?
Yeah, certainly. The reason why we've included discount market sales housing in the advice of your consultant and the case officer. So the mix we're proposing is directly reflects the advice that we've received. And obviously discount market sales is now, following the 2019 MPPF, is now an acceptable form of affordable housing. Now, clearly the details and the mechanism for how this housing is delivered and making sure that it will work in practice at a local level will need to be dealt with through the Section 106 negotiations and agreement that will be binding on the developer. But say to confirm, the reason why we've included it is at the request of and the advice of the council.
Councillor Sheldon, do you have any other questions?
No, I'll pursue that when the offices are open in a second.
Has any other member got any points that they want to ask Mr. Summerfield? Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Summerfield. Now the item is now open for debate by members. So can members who wish to speak on this application please indicate either on by telling Mark or by sending me a note.
Councillor Sheldon has indicated he wishes to speak.
Okay, Councillor Sheldon, you kick this one off then, please.
Oh, that surprised me. I didn't expect to be first. Okay, well, I might as well start at the beginning around the affordable housing, because the officers confirmed that they did actually suggest that they wanted market discount rate rather than affordable rent. And well, rather than I'll wait for that answer, the other points I want to raise are: it's really great that we're having people following the council's lead in building low energy homes, and I understand people's concerns around the access. Unfortunately, the way legislation works, because the county council highways department has said there's no problem with the highways, if we refuse it on those grounds, as I understand it, and it's appealed, we haven't got a chance, because we can't overrule the highways officers. Bizarrely, we can overrule our own planning officers, but we can't overrule a county highways officer. There are lots of others who want to speak, and I'm sure they're going to raise a lot of other points, so I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Shelton. Mark, has anybody indicated who wants to speak next?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Gassane and Councillor Bialik.
Right, so Councillor Gazzane first, please.
Thank you, Chair, but my question has almost been answered. I am very concerned about the access and the addition and the amount of traffic on Harrington Lane. And also concerned about that there's only one access to this site, although you have 40 houses in there. So I don't understand the logic behind the highways allowing this particular thing to go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Bialik.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand what the highways officer have said, and also the fact that if you look at this scheme in isolation, it would be okay. I've actually visited the site, and when you look at the two garages, when you tell us that the garage on the right is going to be removed, and then you see the picture, it all looks quite nice. But it is part of a give way situation. Only one vehicle can pass at a particular time. I really don't think it's satisfactory, in my view, or to that area. And we got to surely be cognizant of really the existing amount of traffic and the fact that it's going to increase traffic quite a lot. And I don't fully understand how the highways have reached this decision of, yes, it's okay, totally. Now, I can be persuaded by other members who are going to speak, and indeed the officers on the highway situation. I can be, if they can corral my thoughts in a different direction. On the other point, I thought Councillor Sheldon made an excellent point about the quality, or not the quality, but the form of the social housing, whether that is the best. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Sheldon on that point. And finally, with regard to the amount of social housing, it appears to me that when you look at the quality of the development, it is a very high spec, and it seems that we're paying for the high spec and for the high prices of these houses on the basis of reducing the affordable housing. Now, that's just an impression I get. I'm still uncomfortable with it, and if any of those points can be picked up by any officer, or if somebody else is going to contribute to allay my fears, I'm not totally there with this recommendation at this moment in time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bialik. Who is our next speaker, Mark?
No other speakers.
Could I speak, Mark?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah.
Councillor Henson, please.
Yes, carry on, Councillor Henson.
I've looked at this site, and I know the site reasonably well, and the area it is in. I feel it's a poor site, a tight site, poor highways access, and I think there is room to look at this again. In whatever reasons, I understand clearly that the council is still money is very interesting in this, but I think you've got to start to realise that when people who buy these houses, what the access and the surrounding area, that the problems that is going to cause in and around Pinhoe there, I'm absolutely deeply concerned on this, because we've got to be more more looking forward to making sure that people that's been there for years, that their lives are not upset by new estates going around. Not against new estates by any means, but we have to be more vigilant And as for county council, highways or haddock, whichever way you would like to call them, they don't agree with much of our highways. We have to dance to their tune, and it's about the time that we dance to our own tune here in Exeter, because none of us know what's going to happen or the money market for housing anyway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Can I ask, Mark, have we got anybody from County Highways participating in this meeting?
There's nobody, Chair, unless the planning officers know otherwise.
Right. Mark, can you tell me who wants to speak next, please?
I'd like to speak as well at some point, please, Councillor Sutton.
Can I
yes,
speak,
okay.
Councillor Branston?
Yes, okay. Councillor Sutton, then.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's always difficult, isn't it? Because particularly in parts of the city like Pinho, where there has been considerable development, both within the city boundaries and from our neighbours in East Devon, kind of hard up against the boundary, and we have to consider the applications that have come before us, and it's fine for Councillor Henson to actually say, we need the SIL money, or Devon County Highways, we need to overrule Devon County Highways, but the world doesn't work like that. We don't make decisions on the basis of what we might get in SIL. We make decisions on the basis of what the applicant is trying to provide, which actually is housing for people in the city. On the matter of highways, that is the law, and unless central government changes the law around planning and planning advice, we may not like the advice we get from Devon County as the highway authority, and we may frankly disagree with it, and have good reason to do that. But their advice is their advice, and they have said that there are no highway grounds on which to reject this application. The other point is building around the edge of already settled communities is always going to be unpopular, and as all cities expand, people who are on the edge of the city don't like the people who are coming along next, even though their houses were probably objected to by the people who were there kind of 2 fields before them. I think there's a lot to like about this application. I think the quality of the houses is commendable. I like the fact that the applicants are looking at zero carbon homes, and that's what we need, because there are way too many families in the city who are in fuel poverty and need access to better housing. It's always finely balanced, but I am broadly speaking in favour of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Chair. This application is a real quandary for me. I think I fundamentally agree with all the comments that are being made about the highways issue. It reminds me very much of an application we had on Topsham Road, where Devon County argued that there wouldn't be an impact on Topsham Road because it was already at a standstill. And that's not an acceptable answer for why we should not object to an application. And in that case, we were not able to use our highways objections either. And it's very frustrating that this is how the system works, and that the first time people really get to lobby about a highways issue is when it gets to planning, but they don't get to directly lobby the highways department. I think they do through their county councils, but not in the same way we do as a planning department. So I find that really frustrating, and I find it frustrating as someone who lives on the east of Exeter, knowing what the adverse impacts are, and that I cannot use that really legitimately as a reason to object to this application. I think it on paper, I have to agree with Councillor Wood, it's an ideal application. We like the idea that we're going to get a really good quality building, and that we are looking at the environmental ethos that the City Council are trying to produce through their own development company and with our council housing. And I want to be supportive of that. And I think there is some leeway that probably can be given to the costs of an application because of the environmental impact. But from what the gentleman explained when he spoke earlier. He said he seemed to imply that the site was unworkable to make it viable with 35%, which also says to me, then why are we developing it? Because no one can make that site work. So I think there's a lot of good with this application, but I'm aware of the bad. But I'm not sure that we have the power to object on the grounds we should. Because, for instance, I think that the ridge line at the top of Pinhoe shouldn't be developed on. The council believed it shouldn't be developed on. We believed on it so much we took it to the High Court to try and prevent the development there, and we lost that argument. So that's another reason I feel we should be able to object, that we can't, because we know the government don't share our feelings on that. So I understand the feelings of the speaker earlier who said a Labour council shouldn't allow this to happen. But all that happens if this Labour council refuses it is it's probably going to win on approval with an independent planning inspector employed by the government. So I don't know how to vote on this. I think it's like was said before, it's finely balanced, and I really don't know with the arguments in either way how I'm going to vote at the moment. And I think it's important that we get all of those things out and we say it all, because it's not an ideal world, and this is not an ideal application with really simple answers.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Branston.
Thank you, Chair. I think that the 30% affordable house would be a reasonable compromise, as being raised by one of the ward councillors. However, I'm still quite concerned with the traffic issues that have been raised, but I like what Councillor Morse just said, particularly, and I think at this moment, although I'm not totally convinced, I think that I'm more likely to be inclined to vote for this application, in view of it's going to be provided quality accommodation, and the speaker on their behalf did cover a lot of issues with regard to why there was so much abnormal cost involved in this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brunson. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, please.
Councillor Harvey, are you there?
Can I speak, Rachel?
Is Councillor Harvey not there? Carry on then, Councillor Fowle. I'll call Councillor Harvey in a moment.
Thank you. I mean, just in short, not enough affordable housing, too many car parking spaces, and poor access. No, thank you.
Chair, I'd like to speak again, please, Councillor Henson.
Can I call Councillor Harvey first if he is there still, please? Okay, then Councillor Henson, you carry on.
Just a couple of remarks there, Chair, is that I mentioned that the Labour Party, people are failing to grasp the fact that we will lose everything if it goes to the inspector, because we have failed and failed the council to deliver our housing site policy, 5-year housing supply. And that's what's wrong. Nothing to do with the government. It's us. We didn't have our ducks in order. And this is where it's going wrong with sites like this. I have no objections to the site itself, with the affordable number is acceptable on a difficult site, because a builder would have to pay that to get that back, but to get his money back. But the point is, we've got to stop this nonsense. It's our delivery of 5 years housing supply that we failed to get, and that is it keeps coming back, blaming the government. It's nothing to do with the government. It's us who haven't got it right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Have we managed to get Councillor Henson? Have we managed to get hold of Councillor Harvey yet?
Hear me? No? Can you hear me now? You hear me now?
Councillor Harvey, yes, we can hear you now. Carry on. Councillor Harvey, you've disappeared again.
How about now? Yeah?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. First thing I'd like to say is I'd like to propose the removal of the emergency access. I won't take very long about it. If it's not required, I don't see any reason to have it, and I believe it will become badly used by pedestrian cyclists as a cut through the estate and out onto Church Hill, which I believe is dangerous. So I'd like to propose that, and I'll wait to see if anybody seconds it. Secondly, the highways issue. Now this is very interesting. Devon are talking about the Pinho area access statement as amended. Well, my understanding is that that has not been to any of Devon's committees. It has no standing whatsoever. It is a piece of work that's been done by some officers, but has not been approved by councillors in any way, shape or form. But to some extent, that's irrelevant. What's really valid about it is that there are several pieces of traffic where Devon are talking about the use of the bus service as being the panacea for traffic congestion. Now, I don't know about you, but I am absolutely convinced that the bus service will not return to anything like it was before the COVID disaster or crisis. So, what Devon are actually telling you is that there is no problem here because they can deal with the traffic by using buses. Now, these are buses that they have absolutely no way whatsoever to ensure, to guarantee are provided. Well, they do. They can buy them. They can pay for them. But I don't think there's any possibility of that happening whatsoever. So I think we are within our rights to be able to stand up and say that the answer that Devon has given us about the highways is in fact flawed. So I think we can go ahead. I am perfectly happy to go ahead on that basis. So I shall be voting against this application. Others have said you don't need me to tell you about the traffic congestion. So there will be traffic congestion over and above caused, and the way that Devon suggests that this traffic congestion will be mitigated, I don't believe will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Matt Diamond, one of the planning officers, wishes to make a comment. Matt, would you like to come in now, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give the officer perspective on some of the points raised. So I think one of the first points mentioned was from Councillor Sheldon about discounted market sales, affordable housing. It's probably worth reminding members what the policy compliant level of affordable housing for this site would be if there weren't viability issues. So that would be 35%, which equates to 14 affordable dwellings. 70% social rented would equate to 10 affordable social rented dwellings, and 30% intermediate, which would be 4. Now, intermediate dwellings, as the developer has mentioned, can include a variety of different affordable housing products, one of which is discounted market sales. So in effect, by providing 4 number discounted market sales units, they are in effect complying with the council's policies. And the only other points I want to make on that are, as the developer said, an independent valuation has been carried out, which the council has appointed, and that did conclude that only 15% affordable housing was viable. So if the application was refused on the basis of insufficient affordable housing, there is a chance that whilst the developer is offering 25% now, that we would end up with a reduced amount of affordable housing should it go to appeal. In terms of the highways issues, I think all we as officers can say is that the local highway authority has looked at this and concluded it is acceptable. It's probably worth reminding members what the MPPF says in regard to when
LPAs can refuse developments on highways grounds. So quoting paragraph 109, it states that development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. So in a sense, there's two things there. A, if a development is going to be unsafe, and B, whether it will generate so much traffic that it would basically cause a severe impact in terms of congestion. Now again, if we refuse the application on this basis, I think we as officers are going to need a little bit more clarity on what specific highways issues members are concerned about, and quite clearly we would need to appoint an independent transport consultant to verify those issues should this application go to appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item, please?
Chair, could I make a couple of comments as well, just following on from what Matt said? Is that okay?
Certainly, Paul.
Yeah, I think in
Paul
terms of...
Jeffrey, officer.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said my name, shouldn't I? In terms of the offer that's put in front of you, in front of members today, that 25% is something that Verto have said that is their final offer in a way. So although a suggestion was made to go up to 30%, it was something that they wanted to. They said there was no additional increase, and they wouldn't want a deferral because of that, and rather have a decision in terms of what is being offered tonight in terms of like the 25%. And in terms of the Councillor Harvey's suggestion about the removal of the emergency access, that is certainly something that could be achieved. As I said, it was just providing greater flexibility. It isn't essential for the development. The development can proceed in highway terms through the access to the southwest of the site and doesn't actually need the emergency access. So therefore that could be removed from this application if members wish to vote on that.
Thank you, Paul. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item?
Yes, please, Councillor Sparks.
Councillor Sparks, carry on.
Thank you, Chair. I think this site is fantastic. 40 new zero carbon homes. It's in a difficult location. I accept the fact that obviously there was a narrowing of the road for traffic, but let's look upon that as a form of passive traffic calming. This application will provide local tradesmen's jobs. We need these zero homes in Exeter. I think it's quite clear, or it's clear to me that trying to oppose this on the basis of the traffic isn't going to work. It's going to come back on us, and I just think that this development should go ahead. If I look at what's happened in recent years, Pinhole Quarry, 400 homes, the Brickworks, 220, Home Farm, 120 homes. We're talking an extra 40. If I've done my maths right, that's about an extra 6%. Now, I'm not sure an extra 6% will create significant traffic issues in Harrington Lane. It might do it in Pulling Road. It's quite a difficult road. The way the road is laid out is not the best. However, I do not feel that this will create significant traffic problems. If anything, it might actually encourage the local bus provider to provide a better service for that part of Pinhole. I think I'm in favour of this. I've been listening hard to all the different comments tonight, and I think I'm going to go with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sparks. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item, please? Right, if nobody else wishes to speak on this item, I don't know, do we do the emergency access bit first? Can somebody tell me?
Yes, Chair, if it's seconded.
So can I have a seconder then to Councillor Harvey's proposal that the emergency access be removed?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Councillor Sheldon, is that?
Yes.
Right, so you're quite happy to second the emergency access. Now, the application is for approval of this item. Can I have a proposer for this and a seconder, please?
I'm happy to propose it, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton.
Councillor Sparks, happy to second it.
Thank you very much. So it has been proposed and seconded. Can I ask members who wish to vote against the application to please say so now?
Councillor Henson. Again.
Councillor Fowl.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Are we doing the amendment first, or are we doing the application itself?
Yes.
Chair, yes, the amendment first, Chair.
We were doing the amendment first, which is to remove the emergency access.
Can we start again then, please?
Hi. Sorry, members. Yes, so all those in favour, anybody against the removal of the emergency access, please should tell me now.
Yes, Councillor Sutton.
Yes. Yes, Councillor Hussain.
Councillor Bialik.
Are there any abstentions?
Councillor Morse would like to abstain.
Councillor Brunson, abstain.
Councillor Williams, abstain.
Any other abstentions? Mark, can you do the maths for me, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just counting now. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's 5 votes against, and I have 3 abstentions. So it would be 5. Confirm that's 5 in favour.
And I'll have to have this casting vote then, because I haven't voted. Yes, I'm in favour of the access being removed.
Like that, 6 in favour.
Thank you, Mark. Right, we now go to the main application, and Councillor Sutton has moved it. Councillor Sparks has seconded it. Can I have those who are going to vote against it, please let me know now?
Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Fowl.
Councillor Henson.
Are there any abstentions?
Councillor Hussain.
If there's no other abstentions and no others against, Mark, have you done the maths?
I have, Chair. That's 3 against, 1 abstention. So the recommendations have been carried.
Right, thank you very much, members. So that application is carried. Thank you very much, members of the public who have taken part in this part of the debate. We now move on to item number 6, which is Kew Gardens, Monmouth Avenue, Topsham, and Paul Jeffries will be the officer making the presentation on this one. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to Kew Gardens. It's located in Topsham within a conservation area and is a Grade 2 listed building. Access is via a shared drive, accessed off Monmouth Avenue. Inside there are currently 2 dwellings, Kew Gardens and also Kew Gardens Barn, which you can see on the screen. Kew Gardens Barn was granted consent on appeal, and this is used as a separate dwelling. Summer House is also occupies the site of this proposed dwelling. It shows an aerial view showing the trees alongside Holman Way, the access drive from Monmouth Avenue, and the existing arrangements of the site, including the 2 dwellings, Kew Gardens. A few photographs of the site. This is taken from the entrance, Kew Gardens on the left-hand side, and Kew Gardens Barn situated to the rear. This is the proposed site with the existing summer house and where the proposed dwelling is going to be behind the white transit van. This is Key Gardens, the side of which, and this is where the proposed new studio will be relocated. Existing lawn of the summer house where the proposed dwelling will sit. This is another view of that, looking towards Holman Way with the trees, significant trees on the boundary. This is looking back towards Key Gardens. Again, looking back towards Key Gardens, a bit closer to Holman Way. And this is a site where the summer house, the studio, will be relocated. Plan shows a double garage on the ground floor with 2 bedrooms on the ground floor and a garden room in that central location. On first floor, sorry, that's still the ground floor, double garage, utility room, bedrooms, 2 bedrooms and garden room. And the first floor shows a living room, dining room, kitchen. With the mono-pitch roof, seed and green roof proposed to above the section of it, and a mono-pitch roof above the garage. The design, as you see, very contemporary in its approach. The previous application, which I'll come on to, had a extension above the garage, but that has been removed as part of this application. Again, views of the proposed property from another vantage point. And these are some section drawings showing the topography of the site. As you can see, it drops down steeply towards Holman Way on the right hand side here. Okay, as set out in the report, the principle of a new dwelling in this location is considered acceptable. A previous application was refused on issues of scale, massing and design, and its detrimental impact on the setting of the listed building and the character and appearance of the conservation area. This revised scheme has resulted in 13 emails and letters of objection, including one recently received since the report was written, raising concerns about the width of the access way. The amended scheme is contemporary in design, includes mono-pitch roofs and combination of brick, stone and timber. The approach taken is considered appropriate and creates a clear contrast between the existing listed buildings and the new buildings. An important consideration for the proposal was to ensure that the setting of the main listed building, Key Gardens, was not compromised by the new dwelling. The new building is located an acceptable distance from the listed building, and Key Gardens remains the principal focus when approaching from the access. The previous refused scheme included a first floor above the garage, as I previously mentioned, and this has been removed, which has helped the dwelling appear more subservient and is now considered more acceptable. The removal of this element has also reduced its impact when seen from Oxford Orchards and the limited views from Holman Way. In addition, since the previous refusal, the new scheme has an improved relationship with existing trees, with the retention of 2 mature trees alongside Holman Way, the retention of an existing hedge to the east, and a new hedge proposed on the southern boundary between the application site and Key Gardens. Residents have continued to express concern about the suitability of the access to accommodate a new dwelling. However, the highway officer has commented that the arrangement is acceptable with passing places indicated, and the small reductions below 3 metres in some places has not changed his view that the scheme is acceptable in highway terms. In conclusion, it's therefore considered that the changes made have resulted in a significant improvement since the previous refusal, and the officer's recommendation is therefore for approval.
Thank you, Paul. Do any members have any questions of clarification on this item? Thank you. If nobody has any questions, we have no members speaking under Standing Order 44, but we have a member of the public speaking on this application. Can I ask Mr. John Harwood, who is speaking against the application, to speak, please? And you also have 3 minutes to speak on the item, and you will be advised when the 3 minutes are up. When you're happy, could you like to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to start now. And I'd like to start by saying that we appreciate the agreement to retain the 2 mature trees on the boundary with Holman Way and the laurel hedge on the boundary with Oxford Orchard. However, we believe that the reasons given for refusing the previous application, as listed in the last paragraph of the History of Site section in the Planning Officer's report, still apply. And that's best illustrated by the site section elevations that Paul's kindly left on the screen. If you look at the lower section, it clearly shows that because of the height, scale and massing of the proposed development, it will still have an overbearing impact on Key Gardens House and become the dominant feature of the site. For example, you can see that the eaves of the development are higher than the ridge of the roof of Key Gardens House. The effect of the proposed planting, which is just a wire trellis on the wall facing Kew Gardens House, is purely cosmetic. The proposed relocation of the large summer house, now used as a studio, which is not mentioned in the Planning Office report, will also adversely affect the setting of the listed buildings on the site. The studio is similar in height and footprint to the proposed double garage. When it was improved, the planning officer said the design has little merit, but is located some distance from the listing building and so will have limited impact. The new location, which you can see on the bottom right-hand corner of the site plan, is both much closer to Kew Gardens House and much more prominent. If you now look at the upper section, the one labelled front southeast, you can see that because of its elevated location, the proposed development will tower over the junction of Holman Way and 4th Street, which is just beyond the bike shop shown on the left-hand side of the section. The floor of the balcony is at the same level as the ridge of the roof of the shop. Without three-dimensional modelling of the asphalt from that junction, as suggested by the Topsham Society, it's difficult to assess the effect of the development on this part of the conservation area. However, it seems likely that the effect of the development will be overbearing on the cluster of historic buildings around the quay, an area that's enjoyed year-round by visitors and residents alike, and on the neighbouring properties and their gardens in Holman Way and White Street. Finally, the proposed site lies at the end of a long and narrow private drive whose junction with Monmouth Avenue has poor visibility, often restricted by parked vehicles. This drive currently serves at least 6 properties. Neighbours who share use of or adjoin the drive have real concerns about potential damage to their boundary walls, fences and hedges during construction, and the increased use of the drive that will result from the development. A professional survey commissioned by Ms Oxford, who owns the section of the drive furthest from the highway, shows that, contrary to the application in the Planning Officer report, the final 30-metre section, which will serve the 3 dwellings, doesn't meet Devon County Council's highway advice for private drives because it's less than 3 metres wide for its entire length and there's no intervisible parking base. In summary, the only public benefit from this proposal is the addition of one expensive unit to the housing stock. The potential cost is a significant negative impact on the character and appearance of one of the most treasured parts of the Topsham Conservation Area and on the setting of some of its oldest buildings. We therefore urge you to refuse the application.
Thank you, Mr. Harwood. Are you happy to take questions?
I certainly am, yes.
Members, do any of you have any questions on this item to Mr. Harwood? Thank you, Mr. Harwood. There's obviously no questions for you. So can I now ask Wyn Davis, who is speaking in support of this application, to speak, please? And you too have 3 minutes to speak on this item, and you will be advised when the 3 minutes are up. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you, Chair. I am the applicant, as you said. So I discussed this with the planning officer when the proposal of the new building was made for the garden, and that was agreed. We had a submission for pre-application advice. We had very positive responses in respect of the principle of the development, heritage, highways, and also the trees. We've now submitted this current design, which meets all the relevant requirements for traffic, conservation area, etc. For information, Kew Gardens site itself has 14 properties, as can be seen on the plan, directly on its boundaries. We have had many requests from neighbours to make alterations to our own garden, to cut a tree or a hedge lower, remove branches, remove trees, grow hedges higher. We've accommodated many of these, but sometimes they are conflicting, and also with a large garden it's not possible to do them all. The planting scheme for this proposal meets some of these requests. But I would like to note that we have worked with our various professionals and the council's consultants to come up with a plan that addresses all of these. The trees that's been mentioned, the hedge, and the impact on the conservation area and listed buildings is addressed in the notes, and changes have been made which reduce the scale and the massing by the redesign of the southeast wall. We have got 14 neighbours adjoining, as I mentioned. Out of those who join our boundary, one has supported the plan, one has objected, and one is neutral. 11 have made no comment. The new house is subservient to the original house. As we walk into the lane every day, we can see that. The new property does not try to replicate the pastiche of designs that have evolved in Topsham. If that were the case, there would be no Dutch houses in Topsham, but they would all imitate the first old dwellings of the town and be very dull. Topsham has an evolution of design, and this building is contemporary and fits in with the narrative of changing designs over time. I, for one, do not love some of the history designs in the town. The flats at Strand Court, the Carlsberg building, the halyards instead of the old Marine Pro factory. But time changes, and they're all part of my town now. And the town would be all the poorer if all the design was a replication of the early dwellings here. The design is contemporary. Part of its roof may just be seen from a small part of Topsham Quay. I looked down there last night. It's about a 2-metre walk that you can actually see it on. So to finish, we have agreed all aspects of the plans with the council's consultants, and I thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any members, have any of you got any questions for Mr. Davis? No, thank you very much, Mr. Davis, for your contribution. Now, the application is now open to debate by members. Who wishes to start off with this one, please?
I'm happy to start if you wish, Councillor Sutton here.
Carry on, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Sutton, can you start?
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. Infill sites in areas of conservation areas are always a bit tricky, but I have to say I'm generally speaking in agreement with the gentleman who just spoke in support. I'm afraid I didn't catch his name. And just because something is new and contemporary doesn't actually mean that it's going to have an adverse impact on a conservation area. And this is true in parts of Exeter, but it's also true in other parts of the country as well. And a city like Exeter and the Topsham part of it has evolved over time. And it seems to me that a great deal of work has been done since the original application to accommodate comments that have been made by the planning staff and we understand from neighbours. So I should be voting in favour of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Can you please tell me now? Councillor Bialik, you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Sutton's remarks. I think it will, in the previous speaker, it will add to Topsham. I'm bound to say it. I know it very well, as I used to live there for some time, and I think it's a lovely part, and I think this will add to it. I'm quite impressed with the building. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Right, if there are no other members wishing to speak, we will move to the vote. So can I ask a member to move the recommendation, please?
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. And a seconder?
Second, Chair, Phil Bialik.
Councillor Bialik. Thank you very much. Does anybody wish to vote against this item, this application? Are there any abstentions?
Councillor Fowle voting against.
We left that a bit late, Councillor Fowle.
Thank you.
Councillor Sparks abstaining.
If there are no other abstentions or people who are voting against, Mark, have you done the figures?
Thank you, Chair. The numbers show there's a clear majority in favour of the recommendations which have been carried.
Right, thank you, members. So it is a majority in favour of the recommendation, so I declare it is.
I'll try to ring him.
Somebody else wishing to speak? No? We now move on to item 7, which is 37 Argyle Road, Exeter. And I believe the officer is Keegan Faraday, who will make the presentation. Keegan, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So this application is for 37 Argyle Road, reference number 200013. The proposal comprises of two key elements, which include a change of use and a rear extension. The change of use is from what is currently a 6-bed student HMO to a 7-bed HMO, and the extension is to the rear. Argyle Road is located northwest of Pennsylvania Road and is within the Durr Yard and St James's Ward. However, the application address is outside of the Article 4 area. As you can see here from the site location plan, it's a detached dwelling, and you can see from the red line boundary that they've got quite large gardens, which is also detailed on the area photograph, where you can see it sort of goes into a wooded area towards the back. Here's a picture from the front of the property. You can see there's a large driveway, area for refuse bins, and a garage. Existing plans, there's no change to the ground floor. The change will just be on, well, no change in terms of the internal layout at ground floor. The only change into the internal layout would be at first floor, and the rear extension would be located on this side of the rear elevation, which you can see here. So ground floor layout remains the same. First floor layout here in the top right of your screens, you can see that there's a bedroom here. They'll be created through a subdivision here. Rear extension is slightly exceeds the depth that's recommended in our SPD, but in terms, it's given the context of the site, the orientation of the properties and the layout, is deemed acceptable. Here is a block plan which shows the parking spaces, 3 parking spaces for tenants, and 1 visitor parking. This has been confirmed by the applicant, who submitted a management statement detailing that if approved, they'll ensure that only 3 of the occupants are given parking spaces, and there's already adequate space for cycle storage. There was 2 objections to this application. The key issue was the imbalance of student HMOs in the area, but it also detailed antisocial behaviour and parking issues. Should note that there's been no complaints either to planning or to environmental health for antisocial behaviour for the property. I'll pass it back to councillors if anyone's got any points of clarification. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Has anybody got any points of clarification?
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Branston.
Maybe I missed it, but did I catch whether or not a recommendation either way was actually stated by the officer?
Apologies. Officer recommendation is to approve.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions to the officer.
Yeah, I've got a point of clarification, Councillor Williams, please.
Right, carry on, Councillor Williams.
Yes, it's about the change of use from 6 to 7. Is it true that at the moment that they could have, there are sufficient bedroom space there to do this without the extension?
There's sufficient floor space at the property from a licensing perspective, but they would need to subdivide one of the bedrooms to create an additional room.
Thank you. And could you also clarify how they could ensure that only 3 parking spaces were used?
Well, it would be ensured in the sense that through their tenancy agreement, there would only be 3 occupants given permission to park. And obviously, if there was complaints and there was excess cars and cars parked on the highway, then there's something that we could investigate in due course.
Okay, so at the moment it's 3 parking spaces and a visitor, but the visitor could actually be a 4th.
At present, there's no restrictions.
Councillor
Sorry.
Yeah, Councillor Henson, you wish to come in and ask a question?
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that a lot of members there might know where it is. But the fact is, there is clarification needs to be said that several of those houses are nursing homes. And I would like that clarified, how near that is. Because that would cause a lot of parking anyway when somebody came to visit. So I'm quite in favour of this and get on with it, because it's an area that is, some houses are already in multiple occupation. There's several nursing homes in Argyle Drive as well. Thank you, Chair.
Keegan, do you want to clarify where these nursing homes are, or don't you know?
I don't know. I know that in close proximity, the surrounding houses are residential dwellings. So the adjoining neighbours and either side of that.
And opposite?
And opposite, as far as I know.
Right, thank you, Keegan. We will now open this for debate, and I have got Councillor Mitchell, who told me at the beginning of the meeting that he wanted to speak on this one. So, Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to speak against this application. I believe, as proposed, the application does contravene Section H5, Paragraph A of the local plan, due to its scale and impact upon its own site and that of neighbouring properties. This area is predominantly made up of family homes, serviced by a narrow private road. By extending the footprint of this former family home, now an HMO, by 38% in my calculations, and increasing the bed spaces from 6 to 7, will decrease the likelihood of this property becoming a family home again. The scale of this extension goes far beyond the rear building lines of adjacent properties. Submissions by members of the public raised issues regarding parking and antisocial behaviour. With 7 residents and their associated visitors, the 3 parking spaces and the visitor space are insufficient, and the narrow private roadway will become more congested than it currently is. In regard to a recent application for an enlargement of an existing HMO elsewhere in the ward, the university informed councillors that the larger the HMO, the more likely the university are to be involved in antisocial behaviour issues. And I believe in future we do need to consult the university each time in regard to student HMOs to find if they have any reported incidents. But clearly with properties, it can vary from year to year by the nature of the very students are occupying the property. I believe that when we're discussing family homes that have become HMOs, we should be very wary of increasing the footprint of these buildings, taking away the potential in future for these to revert to family dwellings. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Please, can they indicate now?
Councillor Sparks.
Carry on, Councillor Sparks.
I think I'll be voting in favour of this development. It's good to see actually a landlord investing in their property. To take a property of that size from 6 to 7 and to increase it by 38% has surely got to be welcome. The fact that the tenants will have a larger, more amenable living space. I take on board the comments about antisocial behaviour, but as there has been no history of antisocial behaviour according to this application, I don't think that we can create a situation and determine that there will be antisocial behaviour just by adding one person. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support Councillor Mitchell's comments, and also just to counter Councillor Sparks' comment about adding one more makes no difference. I live surrounded by students, and what I have found, and also this has been supported by the university's student liaison officer, that once houses in multiple occupation go beyond 6, they are more difficult to manage, because what happens is you have family type groups of students moving in together, and it's less likely to happen when it goes over 6. So I'm going to be voting against this purely on that, because I would not actually, even if it weren't for the extension, I wouldn't be agreeing to the change of use from 6 to 7 if that had been a separate application. So I'm sorry, I cannot support this.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Can I ask Keegan, is this a student house, or is it a house in multiple occupancy which has permanent residents? Do we know?
It's currently a student accommodation.
Thank you, Keegan. Do we have anybody else who wishes to speak on this item, please? If nobody else wishes to speak on this application, we will go to the vote on this one. The application is a recommendation for approval. Can I have somebody to move this item, please?
Councillor Sparks.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you. So Councillor Sparks will recommend it. Councillor Henson is seconding it. Are there any members who wish to vote against this item?
Yes.
Can you please say who you are?
Councillor Mitchell.
Councillor Morse.
Councillor Williams.
Councillor Hussain.
Councillor Bialik.
Anybody abstaining? Mark, have you done
Sheldon.
Councillor Sheldon, do you say you're abstaining?
Yes.
Thank you.
They've just tweaked that we would have.
Anybody else wish to say anything? Mark, have you done the figures for me, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly counting now. So that's 7 in favour, that's 5 voting against, and 1 abstention. So the recommendations have been carried.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Yes, that one is carried. Thank you, members. Now this takes us to item number 8, the list of delegated decisions. Can I ask Bindu to present this?
Thank you, Chair. The list of made and withdrawn applications sits before members. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Can I, Chair?
Councillor Henson, yes.
Are we on delegated divisions?
We are.
Are we on delegated divisions? I should have let you know about this in page 95 at St Lloyd's.
Yes, we are.
It's to do with the site at Thornpot Rise, page 95. Delegated briefs, very minor changes. Could I ask the officer what this is? I should have looked at, rung up about this. It's not to do with any paint or colour change, is it, by any chance?
Chair, if you're content, I'll pick the issue up with Councillor Henson outside the meeting, and then make sure all members get a copy of the reply.
Yes, that sounds be a sensible idea. In actual fact, with this item, we do ask that members ask the appropriate officer before the meeting so that they have got the answers ready. Anyway,
no, I'm sorry, it's my fault, Chair.
It's okay. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Thank you, Bindu. This brings us to the last item of business on tonight's agenda, and that is the appeals report. Can I ask Bindu to speak on it, please?
Thank you, Chair. Again, the report is before members for information. If there are any questions, happy to take them.
Are there any questions to Bindu? No, well, thank you, members. That brings us to the end of this evening's proceedings, and I will now formally close the meeting.